Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're putting two blueprints under the microscope, really different ones.
Yeah, definitely.
On one side, we've got the, ancient structure of Freemasonry,
Mhm.
all about morality, allegory, building that inner spiritual temple.
Right. And on the other.
The other side is, well, bleeding edge stuff. Site reliability engineering SRE at massive digital scale.
Mm.
They're obsessed with preventing outages like 5 nines availability.
It's quite the contrast, isn't it? But that's the challenge. Our goal here isn't really to say one's better.
No, not at all.
It's more about stripping away the rituals, the jargon, trying to extract the core principles. How do both these systems build things, one moral, one digital, that are meant to last, meant to handle failure?
Looking for that common code, that structural integrity.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Every strong system, it seems, starts with some kind of governing document, right? A constitution, a sacred text.
Absolutely. Foundational rules.
So for Masons, this starts with the Ahaimon Rizan, commonly called the Book of Constitutions.
That's the one.
What's fascinating right off the bat is that even the name of this key text is, well, up for debate.
It really is. The foundational code starts with a bit of ambiguity. You have Dr. Del Co. back in 1822.
Yeah.
He looked at the Hebrew roots and suggested Ahaimon Rizan meant something like secrets of a prepared brother.
Oh, secrets.
Yeah, or maybe a corruption of a phrase meaning the thoughts or opinions of a true and faithful brother.
Hang on. Pause there.
Yeah.
You're saying they named a published book, one that governed the whole fraternity,
Mm-hmm.
Secrets of a Prepared Brother. That sounds, well, like a direct contradiction.
It does, doesn't it? And that's exactly the objection people raised. It seems like a misnomer,
Right.
which is why Dr. Mackey's interpretation maybe makes a bit more sense structurally.
Okay, what did he suggest?
He broke it down differently. A hum for brothers, mana for select or appoint, and ratson for the will or law.
So, the law of appointed or selected brothers.
Exactly. And that definition fits much better with a document laying out rules and governance for, an established group. Defines the structure. It's a moral contract, even if the exact wording is debated.
Okay, so Masonry starts with this foundation built on truth, morality.
Yeah.
But the governing text itself needs interpretation, consensus.
Or you need scholarship.
So what's the SRE equivalent? What's their foundational text defining success?
That would be the service level objective, the SLO.
SLO.
Yeah. Where Masonry defines structure by, let's say, philosophical agreement, SRE defines it with objective numerical targets.
Aye.
An SLO might specify, say, 99.999% availability, or a certain latency or throughput. It is the law of the system, but it's defined by cold, hard data.
Wow, that's a radical contrast. One needs faith and interpretation, the other needs processing power.
Pretty much.
Does that rigidity of the SLO remove all the ambiguity then?
Well, it tries to, but its objective nature brings a different kind of pressure. SLOs define not just success, but also, crucially, the cost of success. Well, getting to 5 nines, that 99.999%, it's exponentially harder and way more expensive than 4 nines.
Right, diminishing returns.
Exactly. So the SLO gives the SRE team the power, the leverage, to ask the business, is that extra 9 really worth the huge engineering cost? It anchors everything back to a measurable reality check.
Makes the SLO feel less like a constitution and maybe more like a financial agreement, a covenant.
In a way, yes. It ties ambition to resources.
Okay, so regardless of the foundation, moral or mathematical, both systems need tools, right? Tools to check adherence, maintain integrity. What are the Masons using?
Well, in Freemasonry, the tools are literally physical builder's tools, but used symbolically for moral guidance.
Okay.
The Great Lights are the Holy Bible, the square, and the compasses. The Bible is the guide for faith, sure, but the square encompasses. That's where architecture really meets personal conduct.
Tell me more about how they use those, the square and compasses.
Okay, so the square, it's there to remind the Mason to square our actions. Basically check if your conduct lines up with virtuous standards. Upright.
Makes sense.
The compasses, though, maybe even more critical, they teach the Mason to circumscribe our desires and keep our passions in due bounds.
So it's about restraint, self-control.
Precisely. It's a mechanism for self-governance, built right into the symbolism.
That's incredibly disciplined.
Oh.
A constant reminder for the individual builders, the Masons, to check their own work, curb their own impulses.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
it continues. Fellow crafts get the plumb, square, and level.
Board tools.
Yeah. Plumb for walking uprightly, square for actions again, and the level. That's a profound one. It reminds them everyone travels on the level of time.
Meaning?
Meaning, regardless of your rank or station, we're all heading towards the same end. It grounds them. They see themselves as moral builders, constructing an inner spiritual building, not just, a big stone monument.
That's quite beautiful, actually. So if the Masonic Square keeps individual passions in check, what's the SRE tool for checking structural integrity and maybe the intent behind changes in the digital system?
That has to be the error budget.
Error budget, okay.
It's a clear objective metric, usually quarterly, and it comes directly from the SLO.
How does that work?
Well, if the SLO says the service needs 99.999% uptime, the error budget is the leftover bit. The 0.001% of time the service is allowed to be down or unreliable.
Wait, hang on. Allowed. So it's not a goal, it's a failure allowance. It defines how unreliable things can get before you have to, stop?
Precisely. And that's where it becomes this incredibly powerful tool. It's basically conflict management disguised as a technical metric.
How so?
It takes the politics out of things. Think about it. Product developers always want to launch new features, right? Faster.
So that introduces risk.
Always. So if the error budget is running low, meaning the system has been flaky recently, the data speaks for itself. The developers have to stop launching new stuff until the SRE team stabilizes things.
Wow. So if the product VP is pushing for a risky launch, the SRE team doesn't argue philosophy. They just point to the nearly empty error budget. End of discussion.
Pretty much. It's like the digital version of the compasses, right? Circumscribing the desires, the ambitions of the product team based on the system's actual health.
That's clever.
Yeah.
And how do they measure this? How do they know when the budget's being spent?
Well, they rely on really sophisticated monitoring systems.
Oh, like a
Borgmon.
Borgmon.
Yeah, think of it as like the system's unbiased watchdog. It's this programmable calculator, tracks time series data, sends alerts. It objectively spots the instant the system starts missing its SLO target. No wiggle room.
Incredible. Okay, let's shift gears slightly. From measuring integrity now to sustaining the system long-term, ensuring learning. Masonry has this structure of progress, rites of passage.
Right, the symbolic pilgrimage.
Yeah, representing humanity's toilsome progress from ignorance and barbarism to a state of civilization. That journey metaphor.
And in SRE, you see that same idea, continuous improvement, but it manifests as this relentless drive to eliminate toil.
Toil. Define that in SRE terms.
Toil is basically the grunt work. Manual, repetitive, tactical, operational tasks. The stuff that keeps the lights on day to day, but doesn't actually improve the system or lead to innovation. It doesn't scale well.
Okay, so how do they fight against this toil? How do they enforce that path towards, digital enlightenment through efficiency?
They have a very specific non-negotiable rule, a mandate.
Which is?
SREs must cap their operational work, their toil, at 50% of their time, max.
50%? Half their time?
Yep. The other 50% must be spent on engineering projects. Things designed to reduce future toil, improve automation, add resilience features, make the system better.
Wow.
If an SRE keeps getting paged for something that requires just a rote algorithmic response, that's a huge red flag. It means something needs to be automated away. Immediately.
50% protected time for engineering focus. That's almost revolutionary in a typical business setting. They're literally building long-term scaling and improvement into the job description itself.
It's fundamental to how SRE scales sublinearly, meaning the team size doesn't have to grow at the same crazy pace as the system itself.
Makes sense.
But this path to knowledge, especially learning from failure, it looks radically different from the Masonic approach.
How so? Masonry emphasizes secrecy.
Exactly. Right? The obligation of secrecy. The philosophy behind it is something like, virtue will not grow unless its roots be hidden. Keep it away from the harsh light. Let it develop internally.
Okay, hide the roots to grow virtue. But SRE's learning mechanism, it needs the opposite.
Total opposite. Complete, radical, transparent exposure. That's the postmortem culture.
Postmortem culture.
The ideal for an SRE team is actually to only get alerted on new and exciting problems.
Because the old ones should be fixed, automated.
Precisely. So when failure does happen, and it will, a detailed postmortem report is absolutely mandatory. And the key part, it must be blameless.
Blameless. That sounds idealistic. Easy to say, hard to do. How did they enforce that?
The focus has to be purely systemic. What went wrong with the system, the process, the automation? Never about pointing fingers at individuals. It's about learning, not blaming.
Yeah.
And think about this. an unreviewed postmortem. They say it might as well never have existed. The whole value is in sharing it transparently across the whole organization.
So everyone can learn from it.
Exactly. By exposing the roots of failure, SRE helps the entire institution learn and prevent that same failure from happening again, anywhere. It's fascinating, isn't it? Masonry hides roots to cultivate the individual. SRE exposes roots to cultivate the system.
That is a powerful contrast. Okay, that brings us nicely to structural defense. Redundancy. How do both organizations make sure the whole structure survives, the inevitable storm?
Right.
An attack.
Result.
For a Masonic lodge to even be considered legitimate, legally constituted, it needs certain things, right?
Yeah.
Preserving the ancient landmarks is key.
Tradition is part of the structure.
And they need a charter, the book of the law, the square and compasses, and at least 7 members, I think.
That's right. The integrity depends on strict adherence to these traditional, almost regulatory components. It's a kind of institutional redundancy. And the worshipful master has a duty to protect that, remove any aspersions against the institution.
So, tradition and regulation as defense. SRE also needs stringent defense. But it sounds like it comes from a different angle. Simplicity, maybe? Over-provisioning?
Definitely simplicity. That's a core virtue. Every new line of code, believe it or not, is often seen as a liability, not an asset. More code, more potential bugs, more complexity.
Interesting perspective.
So defense starts with really rigid change management. The philosophy is basically, never change a complex running system all at once. That's asking for trouble.
So you do it piece by piece.
Exactly. Gradual rollouts, staged rollouts, essential best practices. You sort of dip your toe in the water before you dive headfirst with a new feature or change. Test the waters.
Okay, that handles change risk. But what about, catastrophic failure, big outages? That's where the real structural shock absorption comes in.
Absolutely. And they don't just plan for one thing failing, one server, one data center. That's not enough.
Yeah.
Not even close. That's where capacity planning gets really serious. SRE requires systems to be provisioned for what they call an N+2 configuration.
N+2. Okay, what does that mean in practice, sounds like? Intense paranoia, planning for multiple disasters at once.
It kind of is. N is the capacity you need for your normal peak traffic. Simple enough.
Right.
The +2 means the system has to keep running, maintain an acceptable user experience, even if you lose capacity equivalent to your single largest planned event.
Like shutting down a data center for maintenance.
Exactly. And at the same time, you also lose capacity equivalent to your single largest unplanned failure.
Like a fiber cut or a regional disaster.
Yeah, or a massive system crash. So you're planning for both happening simultaneously.
Wow. Okay, N+2 means planning for scheduled maintenance and a sudden catastrophe hitting at the exact same moment, and the users shouldn't notice much.
That's the goal. Acceptable user experience must be maintained. It means you're fundamentally designing for failure, expecting it from the very beginning.
That requires serious engineering.
Oh, yeah. Extreme defense in depth, standardized infrastructure code, automation, everywhere, using pre-approved, blessed frameworks that build in reliability from the start. Thinking about load balancing, dependency management, failure zones, all designed to handle that N+2 scenario. It's the ultimate expression of redundancy, really.
This has been really fascinating. We started with, the symbolic building of the moral self in Masonry, and we ended up with this hyper-resilient engineering for global digital systems in SRE. Worlds apart, it seems.
On the surface, yes.
But the underlying architectural code, the principles, they feel weirdly universal. You need foundational rules, whether they're debated texts or hard SLOs.
Right. You need tools, symbolic or digital, to measure integrity and keep things in check. Compasses or error budgets.
You need a constant commitment to getting better, reducing the drag, the inefficiency.
Yeah.
Whether that's ignorance or toil.
And a culture that learns from failure doesn't just hide it or punish it, whether through secrecy or radical transparency.
Yeah.
And, there's even shared history in the language sometimes. That pursuit of the perfect, enduring structure, it's ancient. The Knights Templar, whose history often gets tangled up with Masonic lore.
Okay.
They had that motto, in hoc signo vinces, in this sign you will conquer.
Right.
Well, that very phrase, that idea of a guiding sign or principle ensuring victory, it actually gets cited in modern SRE literature as inspiration for their structured, principled approach to reliability.
Wow. So the ancient quest for moral truth and the modern quest for 5 nines.
Yeah.
They both rely on these universally understood signs, these codes, these principles of solid construction.
It seems so. It makes you wonder, doesn't it?
At least you ask the listener, maybe.
Yeah. What unseen architectural code is governing your own life or your work? And maybe more pragmatically, Is your system provisioned to N+2? Are you actually ready for that simultaneous planned and unplanned outage?
A question worth building on, for sure. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
My pleasure.
We'll catch you next time.